about-face from SickKids over pandemic back pay for some nurses.
It's like our voices are heard for once in the last how many years since the pandemic started.
After complaining to CBC Toronto about being relied upon during the pandemic only to be left out of a lump sum payment, we'll explain why SickKids says it's decided to change course.
I worry about her getting heat stroke, even though she's not outside.
Plus, living inside dangerous heat. A CBC investigation measures how hot homes without AC got this summer. Some say the staggering new data shows a maximum temperature bylaw is needed.
And now first pitch swinging, Jonah Heim has done it again.
And not enough heat on the Jays' bats, dropping a fourth straight game in a crucial late-season series against the Rangers. What it all means for Toronto's dwindling playoff hopes. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We're starting things off tonight with an outcry from some nurses that rang through the halls of the hospital for sick children and led to a significant reversal tonight. Originally, nurses who had worked in the hospital during the COVID-19 pandemic but had since left had been excluded from a hospital decision to provide lump sum back pay. Then, after CBC Toronto started asking some questions, this evening the hospital admitted it had misjudged the situation as it decided to change course. Anam Khan was with one of the nurses just as the hospital's decision came down.
Zoe Grease was on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic as a nurse at SickKids. She says she left the hospital this year because of burnout.
I had recognized a very large part of my life, personally, emotionally, physically, was given to that job.
Last year, another nurse who still works at the hospital sent her an internal memo confirming nurses would get a lump sum payment to recognize their work during the pandemic, but not staff who had resigned.
I felt disappointed. It was an organization that I felt so prideful working for, but to know that I was so easily tossed to the side when it came to financial compensation for my years of work and my years of service.
Lindsay Pelch is in the same situation. She worked at the hospital for a decade, but left in the fall of 2021.
As much as it's about the dollar amount, it's also about the respect. And when the hospital chose to do this, they took away that little bit of respect that we got back when they overturned Bill 124.
The Ford government passed Bill 124 pre-pandemic in 2019. It capped wage increases for public workers in Ontario, like nurses, at 1%. The province was taken to court over it, and in November of last year, Ontario's Superior Court ruled it as unconstitutional. In April of this year, an arbitrator then decided nurses with the Ontario Nurses Association were entitled to back pay for the time the bill was in effect. Although nurses at SickKids are not part of the association, the hospital decided to extend the pay to its nurses too, except ones who had left the hospital. Tonight, after some of those nurses started voicing concerns to the media, a reversal from the hospital. Saying in a statement, SickKids wrote, "We misjudged the implications of our decisions on our most important asset, our people, both past and present. On reflection, we should have included staff who have left SickKids in our retro lump sum payments."
It feels like our voices are heard for once in the last how many years since the pandemic started.
Grease says she is grateful but worries the fight for proper recognition still isn't behind her. The government had said previously it plans to appeal the ruling against Bill 124. Anam Khan, CBC News, Oshawa.
Now to a CBC investigation shedding light on how dangerously hot it can get inside apartments without AC in the summer. We put temperature and humidity sensors inside homes and measured readings of 26 degrees or higher the majority of the time. As Farmarelli explains, the data has some health experts concerned and some local politicians looking for a new bylaw.
It's 7:30 at night, but there's no reprieve from the heat inside Bernadette Mamo's apartment, even with a large fan and the window wide open. We visited her Scarborough apartment during last week's heat wave, where she lives with her 86-year-old mother without AC.
It's difficult. I worry about her getting heat stroke, even though she's not outside. because it does exasperate everything. Your health, your breathing.
Mamo's apartment is one of 10 units in Toronto where we installed temperature and humidity sensors this summer, all part of a cross-Canada CBC News investigation monitoring temperatures in units with partial air conditioning or none at all. At Mamo's home, the data shows it was almost always hotter inside than it was outside.
The hottest temperature reached in your home was on July 6th. That temperature hit this is the indoor temperature, hit 28.07 degrees. With the heat index, it felt like 31 degrees. What goes through your mind when you see these numbers?
It's aggravating and it's angering.
Mamo isn't alone.
So it's terrible.
Khalil Al-Doubi lives in this high-rise with his wife and 5 kids. More than half the readings in his apartment were above 26 degrees, the maximum indoor temperature widely considered safe by experts. It got so bad, some nights his kids pulled mattresses outside.
They sleep at the balcony.
One of the key findings, on average, countrywide, temperatures peaked at 7 p.m.
Without that nighttime reprieve, it's that much harder on one's body. That will be more dangerous for people who have other health conditions, more dangerous for older adults.
The findings alarmed this expert.
Half of the households that participated in this project experienced ongoing temperatures that were higher than what we would consider appropriate or safe.
There's no city requirement for landlords to offer AC in units. While there's a minimum temperature a unit must be maintained at in the fall and winter, there's no maximum threshold.
Ultimately, landlords have a responsibility to keep the temperature at 26 degrees or below.
Councillor Josh Matlow has been pushing for a maximum temperature bylaw for years.
This is a health and safety issue. And I know that our public service has the ability to figure this out with us if they choose to. And we have a new mayor, we have new energy at City Hall, and I expect that the public service will respond.
The mayor told us she's open to exploring that, but wants help.
So what I hope to do is to work with the provincial government, because Tenants Landlord Act is governed by them.
As for Mamo,
I'd like to be able to stay in my home comfortably, but it's like we can't.
For now, she hopes last week's heat wave is the final one of the season. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Certainly not dealing with the heat tonight. 15 degrees now, heading down to 8 later on tonight. One of the coolest overnight lows that we've had in a long, long time. And Colette is here now tracking the weather forecast for us. Colette, it is that time of year where we have to get used to temperature swings through the day.
Yeah, it's this kind of weather where you're getting into sort of the transitions in the wardrobe. You need a few pieces in the morning and then kind of peeling them off into the afternoon and hoping, if it's in the case of the kids, they put them in their backpack and bring them back home so we can do it all again tomorrow morning. This is this morning. This is a snapshot at 6 a.m., so a lot of single digits on the board. And certainly through the day, with the benefit of sunshine, we then saw things heating up nicely. 20 degrees in Oshawa and Windsor. So a few 20s there, otherwise some mid and upper teens, 19 for Toronto. So lots of stargazing overnight with that ridge of high pressure, sinking stable air, nice conditions. Same thing into Friday with light winds. So we're going to take that temperature up a little further. Not overnight, 8 degrees a low, but it's tomorrow, up to 21, normal for this time of year for Toronto. Those of you watching from Windsor, you'll be up to 22, also normal for your area for this time of year. Hey, Chris, when I come back, we'll take a look at everything going on with Hurricane Lee.
Yeah, that's looking like it might cause some big trouble this weekend. Thanks, Colette. It was an important night tonight for Ontario's Liberal Party. The first of 5 leadership debates was held in Thunder Bay. Housing affordability and attacking Doug Ford were the 2 dominating issues.
We obviously deserve better than the incompetence, the chaos, the self-dealing from this Ford government.
We have every reason to be all fired up. Doug Ford has sold off our precious Greenbelt.
Do you want a leader who's Doug Ford light, paddling in same kind of insider elite politics? They want their government to give a damn. And not only do I give a damn, I am the steady hand who can captain this ship.
I see so much energy that if harnessed by the right leader, can have limitless potential.
All right, so Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie, MPs Nate Erskine-Smith and Yasser Naqvi, along with MPPs Ted Hsu and Adil Shamji, are the 5 contenders for Liberal leader. There are future debates coming up in our region in Toronto and another one in Brampton. They're scheduled for November, and the vote from party members will be announced in December. The next Liberal leader will have the task of rebuilding the struggling party after it failed in 2 consecutive elections to win enough seats to get official party status. Ontario's next election is set for spring of 2026. Now, last night, we brought you that late developing news that Bonnie Crombie had announced she would be taking a leave of absence from her role as Mississauga mayor. Here's how some people in Mississauga reacted today.
Because it's hard to do 2 jobs. You know, you can't justify it to both the places. So I'm glad she made the decision.
I did like her as mayor, so it would have been fine to have her here.
I don't think someone can do something like both things at the same time, like the province and running something as complex as a growing city like Mississauga. So it does make sense that she has to pick either one.
As of October 7th, Crombie says she'll be solely focused on winning the Liberal Party's top job. In her absence, Mississauga councillors will rotate through the job in an acting mayor capacity. Back in Toronto and down to a big story that's played out all summer long at the waterfront, the Ford government officially submitting its updated plan for the redevelopment of Ontario Place. There's been lots of protest against the original idea and now some significant changes, including smaller buildings and some more park space. But as Ali Chiasson reports, there's one part of the plan that the province is refusing to change.
The news release from the province says they've made changes as a result of feedback from the City of Toronto, Indigenous communities, stakeholders, and community members. And their updated plan features approximately 50 acres of free parks, public and green spaces for everyone to enjoy. But what critics aren't so keen on is what this paragraph says about the removal of a significant amount of trees and vegetation across the site.
We're talking about 800 mature trees that took many years, over 50 years to grow.
Mayor Olivia Chow has been against not just the province's plan to build a mega spa at Ontario Place, but how they're going about it.
Normally, approval first, and then something happens to the land. And I just really hope Premier Ford respect due process and work with the City of Toronto collaboratively for this project.
But the province wants to start felling trees this fall to make room for the development, including a $400 million parking garage, and there isn't much the city can do about it.
The Ontario Place land belongs to the provincial government. We have some pieces of it, but the trees and all of those are on provincial land.
The province is able to say they've otherwise listened to feedback with how the spa's architects scaled back the size of the spa's buildings and added more free public space, including a beach. They also say they'll double the number of trees they cut down by planting new trees on the site.
I think replacing a tree with a sapling is not, a fair replacement.
The group Ontario Place for All says the revised plan is still too big, too expensive, and too shrouded in secrecy.
Like, this was a single source contract, no consultation. We think that Ontario Place will be given away piece by piece if we don't, win this battle on the front line right now.
Which means they're prepared to protest.
But just how effective would that even be? We saw people protesting to protect the trees at Osgoode Hall, and we know how that turned out. Mayor Olivia Chow says she will bring up her concerns about everything surrounding Ontario Place with the Premier at her meeting with him next week. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
COVID-19 is back in the headlines tonight. An updated vaccine is expected to be available for the general public here in Ontario next month. But as Lorenda Redekop reports, some of us could be able to get a shot before the end of the month.
The new formulation of the COVID shot is coming soon to this province, said to be effective against the latest variants.
We're anticipating 350,000 doses arriving before the end of the month. And our priority with those initial doses is for the most vulnerable members of our communities.
That'll include people in long-term care and staff. He expects the new vaccine will be available for the general public in mid-October, with the flu shots coming shortly after that.
we hope we'll have good uptake and good interest in proactively in getting vaccinated before influenza really starts to take off in November and December.
The Ontario government says free flu shots for those 6 months and up will be available starting October 30th. It's also rolling out a new RSV vaccine for those 60+ who are most at risk. And the province is going to allow pharmacists to give more vaccines and prescribe flu medication. Dr. Moore says there's usually an uptick in viruses around the 3rd week of school. He expects a rise in hospitalizations of people with asthma will follow.
The staffing levels, instead of improving, are getting worse.
It's on the same day that one healthcare union warned hospital staffing numbers are worse in Ontario than in any other province. CUPE referred to a tsunami of an aging and growing population.
And when you layer on top of that factors like COVID, RSV, flu, then you have a system which had no excess capacity to begin with, stretched to the breaking point.
Dr. Moore says the good news with COVID is that the effects are now less severe for the general population, and there's less long COVID due to increased immunity. But he says as viruses increase in fall, there could once again be a stronger suggestion to mask.
We will ensure that we have the surveillance that will allow individuals to make informed decisions, but it'll be guidance. It won't be any mandates across Ontario.
He urges people to stay up to date with vaccines, but says for those who can wait, the updated COVID shots arriving this fall will be most effective. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a pretty outrageous alleged assault on a TTC bus this morning. Police say a male passenger was hit with a brick by another passenger. It happened around 9 a.m. on a bus in the Dufferin and Eglinton area, and the victim was taken to hospital, but according to paramedics, his injuries were minor. The suspect fled on foot. Welcome back. It has been a disastrous few ball games for Toronto, and tonight didn't get any better.
Fastball away, sent to left, and caught, no, dropped. Merrifield had it, but it pops out of his glove, and 2 runs come in to score.
Final score tonight, 9-2. The Jays are now firmly on the outside looking in as they hunt for a coveted wild card spot. Texas, who holds one of those spots, took all 4 games of this series, and the Jays were outscored 35-9 over that stretch. Here's what some Jays fans thought after the game.
I don't think they were playing in unison. You know, there wasn't a lot of it didn't seem like they were playing the same game. I think they need a little more teamwork and cohesion.
Same thing that happens every time we have a big game. Our bats disappear and we disappoint. That's what I think. Although we did leave before the end of the game, so if there's a miracle, you'll have to tell us.
All right, let's get back to Colette now. And Colette, you've been watching Hurricane Lee all week, expected to hit Canada's east coast this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. As we speak, Chris, Hurricane Lee having an impact on Bermuda, passing just towards the west. Tropical storm warnings in place there, and they'll be dealing with this as it batters their coastlines through the night tonight into tomorrow morning. And then, of course, it carries on, this Category 1 hurricane reaching into the Maritimes and northeastern U.S. here. As that timing puts it there, we'll see Friday night even the impact of some of the winds, but especially into Saturday the impacts, and then lesser into Sunday. So could still have hurricane force winds or tropical cyclone force before it becomes post-tropical. And this may shift a little bit, but looking like it's coming in right there towards New Brunswick and southwestern portions of Nova Scotia. And then you can see how it will track from there, headed over towards western Newfoundland. So a chance for seeing some areas, you know, perhaps Yarmouth up to 76 millimeters, but when you get into the Browns here, you're seeing 80 to 100 potential in a few spots to be looking at that much in terms of the rainfall. So potential issues besides that, strong winds of 80 to 120 kilometers an hour, wave heights 4 to 6 meters, and flooding. And of course, with some of those winds, we're talking about the risk for some widespread power outages, especially with the vulnerability of that grid in Nova Scotia. So watching carefully there. Do you see this? this little band of cloud cover, high thin cloud coming into eastern Ontario into the weekend, that's on the outskirts of what will be Lee. Now, for us, we're still going to be dealing with high pressure for Friday, for Saturday. Then things start to change as we get into Saturday night for southwestern Ontario, and more cloud cover Sunday into the GTA as well, with a slight chance of showers. Most of that comes later on Sunday. Your overnight temperatures tonight in Windsor, by the way, this is at 4 a.m. You're going to dip down to about 8 degrees by the time we get to 6 a.m. as well. So some cool numbers coming, but we then get to benefit from where we're going into the afternoon hours. So 21, that high on Friday with sunshine. Saturday, mostly sunny, 23 degrees. And then there it is. Sunday into Monday, slight chance for some showers in here. And that's heightened as we go into Sunday night and through the beginning of next week. But really, Chris, it is looking like we will be experiencing a nice weekend, and thinking obviously about our friends and neighbors into the Maritimes.
Yeah, we certainly will. All right, thank you so much, Colette. Ending tonight with something you won't catch every night. A Canadian man and his dog will be featured 6 times in the 2024 Guinness World Record book. We caught up with the duo in Toronto today.
Good boy, come here. Let's go. Started playing Frisbee 23 years ago, started throwing Frisbees to dogs 12 years ago, started throwing Frisbees to Sailor about 5 years ago, just before COVID and right after one of the other dogs that I used to throw Frisbees to passed away. Roll over, roll over. Good boy. We compete together, we train together. It's actually not that much training. It's take him out to the field, 5-6 throws, not even every single day. It's just keeping him in shape by taking him on walks, just making sure that he loves Frisbee. It's his job, it's his purpose, he loves it, but I don't want to make it so, you know, he doesn't like it because we do too much. So it's doing it enough that he has fun with it, but not too much that he doesn't want to do it. So Guinness World Records 2024 is my first time having my photo in the book. I have been in the book 2 other times. This is Sailor's first time in the book as well, and his first time having his photo in the book. So I'm super excited for this year to come out. There's an entire page dedicated to flying discs as well, which is really exciting for the sport.
If only the Jays could catch that well. All right, that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you then.